Good evening, folks, and welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. Oh, lovely weather, no chemtrails. Although I've just looked outside now and we've got 3 big in a line and another one across, so they're up to summer in the evening, but clear skies in the day, and my gosh, can't you feel the sunshine? Just goes to show what they are actually doing, doesn't it, with those trails blocking out that sun. It has a big effect on everything, all life has to. So, interesting week. We have a bit of a video to follow on from the information about the water that discussed last week, and then prompted by me actually hearing that on the ground the conversation appears to be, who do you want to be governed by or ruled by? And it's like, why are people in that frame of mind? Why do you want to be ruled by anybody? And of course, the choice that people are referring to is, do you want to be ruled by the Jews or do you want to be ruled by the Muslims? And it's like, what the fuck's happened to you all? You don't want to be ruled by anybody for it, for God's sake. You know what I'm saying? You were governed. Governed because your sovereignty, which is your dominion right, had been taken into trust by the crown and given to the monarch to give that office sovereignty, your sovereignty, in trust. So you're the sovereigns, but they've took it in trust. You're not ruled, you're governed. It's to keep the system together. England, remember that? That's the problem. People don't remember it. Now remember, this fat fingers, whatever it might be, or to upkeep the law. Very important. My guess is, now that he's up for being involved in this spy garbage of Andrew's mess, they are looking to put in William, which has always been the game anyway, and perhaps if he takes a coronation, he will omit the upkeep of the law. Now that would be very dangerous, and I think that's where they're moving in the next game. So you've got to keep this in mind when you're thinking about, well, am I just going to sit on my ass and do nothing, or am I going to try and assert the rights of England before she disappears? And so this week, putting together, as we have, well, the last couple of weeks, the next phase of this council tax game, which of course is to the Chancery, because we need to be dealing now on trust law. You've got to go through the nonsense in the Star Chambers. You know, you're at the lower courts, then you're at the county courts, and then, of course, you need to move it out and up above that. Otherwise, you're not dealing on England, you're dealing under the Bar Association, which, of course, means that the job of the judge and the prosecutor is to ensure that facts are barred from any kind of valid sort of script in the Star Chamber hearings, as they are really, basically. They're not even courts. So we've been through the two, and now it's been put it together because you're now bringing yourself forward as the sovereign, because of course who's the trustee? Does anybody know who the trustee is? No. Well, we do, in the sense that the fiction is held in the custody of the General Registrar. So, by definition, is the first trustee. And thus, anything else that comes after that is so upon licence from that first trustee. Okay, and that's the importance of this. It's a different game now altogether. And you know, we know that in the Star Chambers they insist you come forward as the trustee, because in doing so you're claiming a position you've not got, and therefore they put you in a position of trustee to some tort, and then judge claims executorship and prosecution are claiming the beneficial interest, and you're haplessly unaware of the entire situation, unless you do know a little bit, and then it's going to get adjourned. Or if you know a little bit and you've got a bit further in, the judge might walk off and come back in another jurisdiction. So you've got to be prepped for all that malarkey. We never got any of that malarkey in this particular endeavour. But clearly, without a shadow of a doubt, are they ready now on new garbage called balance of probability and, of course, the Local Government and Finance Act. And they were the stickling points for them in relation to them making the claim that the liability orders were actually valid, when in fact they're not valid from a judicial perspective, in the sense that Form A, Form B are not there. There is no instrument left for them to actually, the magistrates, to create a liability order on council tax. So they have to obfuscate that. They've done that by just saying it has to be mentioned in a magistrate's court. Doesn't matter who by. And the council so claiming as to be in the court to hear it. Of course, we found out that actually this guy was just on the phone. So how they wangle that? But they do, and they're pulling in case law because they've been playing this little practice, not procedure, for quite some time. And people have missed it. But we haven't missed it. We know what they're doing. But it's getting out of them situations, the difficulty, because you actually have to keep going through it until you get to the point where you can then push it into the proper system, which is what England is. And then you're looking at the sovereignty held in the Crown, the rule of law, due process of law, but more importantly, you're then dealing with trust law, which of course Chancery is there to deal with trust law, but more importantly, the rights of the beneficiary being upheld. Now, we've put this together on the idea that it's been a breach of trust because of the fact that there's an absent trustee and that they've been trying to force that position on us. However, within the actual case, because I recorded the entire thing, on the one hand, he insists that Mr. So-and-so is there because he will address him as such, yet at the end refused the ability to settle either by endorsement, which we've done, or by coin. Now, when you get into the insolvency laws, it's pretty clear that they can only rule you insolvent if you can't pay and there's no sort of sight that you can pay in the future. Well, this judge, no. Because, of course, he wanted it both ways. Yes, you're a trustee at the beginning, but then at the end of it, you're not a trustee, so you can't settle. So that's, in and of itself, is a serious, serious breach of trust. And it's actually bordering on fraud, in truth. Although you don't really want to be mentioning that too much if you can get away with it, because there's other ways around that where you're at least letting them know that that's what you know has happened, but you're not making the actual statement. So it's been a very interesting, couple of weeks in that, you know, you're going through those lower courts and there's billions and millions and tons of statutes and acts and garbage and patient shit that you can play with, push out, present, offer, etc., etc. And you know you're not going to get anywhere, really. But when you get up to proper trust law, it's quite simple. In fact, there's only 4 pages in the actual paperwork that is actually the guts of this move for appeal with claim in as well. So there's 4. It's basically made up of 4 pages, as opposed to the tons and tons of pages that you're doing on conditional acceptances, etc., etc. And then of course, you've got the interpretations, which again, exceptionally important, because you've got to make sure that you're using all these terms that can be ambiguous, that you want to make sure that you're keeping it in trust law and you're not pissing around and giving them joinder at the lesser. So breach of trust, charge, conspiracy, due process, estate, you're making it clear what you mean when you use those terms. And, you know, it's very important, because of course if you were defining your terms, you can pick from the available terminology the ones that apply to what you're communicating. So fact, fiction, first among equals, because then you're into monarch stuff. You know, Magna Carta, holder, human, indisputable, man, principal, registrar general, settled, trespass, trust account, trustee. You know, all these interpretations are exceptional. Bearer, beneficiary, all part and parcel of the language that you're going to use when you go in to Chancery, because it's completely different. Now, and then you've got your piece for the autograph, and then of course you've got the 2 witnesses, which you're also going to require. Now, so this was sent to the Chancery, CC to Dame Sue Carr, Lord Chief Justice, Tom Gregg, Registrar General, because of course he's the trustee, and the Court Director of the Chancery Division. And of course, when I looked at the Treasury, of course you get into that. The First Lord of the Treasury is the Prime Minister, the second is of course the Chancellor. You don't really want to be sending it to them because they're all up for votes. The guy who won is the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury. He doesn't get in and out on a vote, and he's been there for a long time. So rather than sending it into politics itself, you want to send it to the guy at the back end that's got the real power, and perhaps the one dictating terms to both the Prime Minister and, in fact, the Chancellor. So, you know, you've got to include General Registrar because he's the trustee, and you want to make it clear that because you're offering remedy as well, what you expect to take place in this that you've put forward. And of course, the fact that the General Registrar is the trustee. In a sense, you're aiming it at him as well, in truth, because even though he might not be acting trustee, he's licensed it to something else without your full knowledge. And of course, if they want you to be the trustee, then it would stand to reason that you would have access to the accounting. You would be able to open the estate and understand and see everything that's going on around it. You're not afforded that, because they don't even want you to be trustee. They want you to come in as trustee, as claiming it, so they can hit you with trustee to some toy. So the trickery and the deception that's going on in these lower courts is, by definition, because of the fact your solicitor or rather the prosecution, or slick, and the judge are basically there to bar facts from getting involved in the matter. And so once you start to recognise that, you don't necessarily have to get too excited by the fact that they're going to take the piss out of you all the way through. You've got to aim to get it way above that stuff. And so that went off on Thursday with a solemn declaration, which again, everything in this paperwork has been upheld in all the paperwork in the Star Chambers, i.e. specifically in relation to declaring who you are. So everything, even though there's been copious amounts of paperwork, like I said, it's in that plane. For me, it was a game of chess and poker, in the sense that there were things I was putting in there that I wanted to get a reaction. I wanted to see what bothered them, what didn't bother them, etc. And sometimes you have to feign ignorance on some things and make it look like you're not as smart as you're wanting to be. in order you can get that reaction. And I have to say, they played that to perfection, because they certainly showed themselves exactly what they are, in my opinion. And of course, that in essence gives you the points of reference to present it to the higher court. So it's been a very interesting week, and as I said, it went on Thursday. We'll now see what comes from that, but there's quite a number of defendants in there. The judge, the clerk, the prosecution, 5 officers for the council, and the CEO of the actual solicitors acting for the council, who have hired the third party, who was the barrister in the hearing. So there's a lot of defendants in there, and as I said, it's breach of trust for trespass, and it's been a conspiratorial game played by all the said defendants. So it's going to be interesting, and of course there's all the data that we've put in there in relation to the claims, the money, the finance, the charges, etc. Even indeed to the receivers when it was relating to the spouse of a colleague. There's been a lot of paperwork gone in, and there's been a lot of stuff learnt, but ultimately it's more important at this stage where you've got them up there now dealing specifically on trust law. You've pulled in the monarch, you've pulled in the fact that he holds your right, and they have to act in honour of that right. So that it's interesting, it's very interesting how it's come together, and it will be interesting to see how this now moves forward. So, good stuff, and it's not been an easy game, as you've all seen, and this is why, again, I'll say to you, be very careful when you're watching all these so-called experts out there in video land making this claim, making that claim, telling you to do this, telling you to do that, because I can assure you, none of them have done even a fifth of what we've had to do in this 12 months. And it's like I've said to you before, the endorsement side of things. We've done all this back in the day, but what we found were they were taking it, you were getting nothing back. So from that we knew that they'd actually entered the estate because you've given permission. And then it goes to the bottom of the pile and it's coming back to you 12 months later as a debt. Which means they've took, and they're coming back for you again. And you're still involved in the game. Unless you receive paperwork from whatever bill you've endorsed that says 0000, you have not achieved what it is you think you have. And to claim that, just because it's gone in and you've heard nothing, you're only fooling yourself, and maybe you've got 12 months before they come piling down on you again. And this is what we learned years ago when the Freeman game were on, and we all got fed up. I mean, I even had a court say to me that they didn't recognise the Builders of Exchange Act. So, you know, we know it, we've been there, we've done it. It's a long time ago. I've even forgot more than I've, than I remember, but even that doesn't matter. This last 12 months has been very interesting because it's refocused what needed to be focused, in essence, not just to know what we need to know, but more importantly, to reckon and understand with what you don't actually need to be bothering with and dealing with. Because in essence, a lot of the time, the more you pull into your claim, i.e. statutes, acts, etc., then the more ammunition you're giving these people, in a sense, because those rules are for them. Whereas in the Chancery, well, we're saying it should be, this is how it should be. Now, this monarch did all the law. And that means Magna Carta. That means Bill of Rights. It means Act of Settlement. And alien old statutes afforded to the Constitution of England. And he's upholding that. Now, my guess is if they get rid of this one and put this other tosser in, you will not have that oath. And that's the danger. And I think that's the real danger that we're going to be facing in perhaps a not too distant future, which is interesting. Now, I know, so anyway, I've got this document here that somebody sent me today that's quite interesting. I'm very in sync with what it is I've just been discussing, because you need to understand that this is what these people are all about. When we're talking about being called to the bar. So it says major steps to eliminate the ABA Bar Association. The bar is not a judiciary, it is a private members club for statute merchants, with President Trump's announcement severing ties with the American Bar Association, the ABA, a larger issue comes into focus: the entire bar system worldwide. The ABA is merely one branch of the international private membership guild that falsely presents itself as a legal authority. In reality, bar associations do not uphold true law. They administer corporate statutes for financial gain, not justice. And this is where the statement they're there to buy the facts shows itself, because when the facts are put before them, it destroys the merchant class commerce from extorting your estate. So that's basically, when they call to the bar, the job from that moment on is to bar any and all facts from entering the decision making of any hearing or whatever it is they've got you in. So the bar is not a lawful judiciary. It's a private foreign controlled guild that operates outside of divine and natural law. Bar courts function as administrative corporate tribunals enforcing commercial statutes rather than true law. These courts operate under the court registry investment system, the CRIS, where every case is a securitized financial transaction. Now, in those lower courts, we did present the fact that we'd found that they all had DUNS numbers. Now, when you get to the judiciary itself, you can't actually find DUNS numbers for the individuals, but after a bit of digging, you find that the Commonwealth, set up by Oliver Cromwell, does indeed have a DUNS number. So we did present that when we were talking with the courts. However, you've just gained an insight into that idea when it's been laid out that President Trump has been speaking in terms of maybe joining Charles's Commonwealth system. So it's interesting because I've watched something from a guy who we know as a shill, but he even said if you've got a lot of points of reference, it's worth listening to him just to get an idea of what he is talking about. But the main sort of new script coming from him is this idea that there's a real Trump and a fake Trump. And so that it's just so, it's clever that they've done this. However, it's just so transparent. But then for the majority of people, that is going to stick. I mean, especially people that are obsessed with this Trump mania. So on the one hand, you're getting all this is what he's doing, which is what everybody would expect if you were going to break away from this game. But more importantly, what this guy plays out is he pretends that it's basically a war between the Rothschilds empire and something new. Well, we've spoken about this many times. The Rothschilds are only the trustees for the imperial families. They're hidden in most cases. So this idea that if you defeat the Rothschilds, you've defeated the empire, is total nonsense. If it is the case that the Rothschilds are actually being seen to be defeated, it just means that they're no longer being acting as the trustees. It means they're going to be putting in a new set of trustees. And I think this is where the Kazakhstan agreements come into play. The new trustees will probably be representatives from all the world's religions to again front this imperial force, which again, I mean, we've spoke in terms of, we know that there's a Persian Iranian influx or in this bloodline system. I've spoken about the importance of the Mongol horde, or specifically Genghis Khan. Now, you know, when you get into the Moors and such, what you find is that these guys were classed as the Tartarian kings. Now, if you remember the other week, we looked at the Kuduno-Kalergi plan. And there were rather puzzling piece in there about how they wanted it to go back to the old age, ancient Egypt, where this race was brown negroid. Yeah, now, obviously, everybody's mind fixes and says, oh, Africa, Egypt. Well, actually, if you get back into real history, that area was called Kem. And if you then look and start to recognise this idea that actually these Tartarian kings were Moors, and that they came from the other side of Russia, then you're starting to look and think, well, is that where the Egypt that we're being taught actually came from? And then, of course, I've said before, many years ago when Google Maps were, getting going and such, and they hadn't had time to censor everything, I spent quite a lot of time looking across all the landmass at the other side of Russia to China. And, of course, I've studied the Indian, the Vedas, etc., all the doctrines from the Indian culture. And, they're talking about major, huge wars with what sound like nuclear conflagrations on a huge scale. Now, when I was looking at Google Maps back then, you could see clearly what looked like evidence of huge craters across the entire landmass, especially up in the Siberian coastline, but even down to the near side of the Himalayas. And I did such a thing where perhaps that a lot of the war stories from the old Vedas were in fact referencing a major conflagration in that area there, not as we've been presented, the centre of it all being Egypt. So again, it just, as I explore this and other points of information coming for reference, then the Kuduno-Kalergi statement may not be as obscure as you might first think. And so if that's the case, we know that the Tartarian kings were the first, the ones that set up the first caliphate, the Ottoman Caliphate and Empire. And we know that they were in sync with Genghis Khan. We know they were also in sync with, they took over Byzantium. And that they facilitated this caliphate to take over in Byzantium, or Constantinople as it was. So this Tartaria, as a sort of, we were to look at it as an amalgam, we're dealing specifically with the Persians, the Mongols, and the races in that area. Now the Tartars, of course, are included in that. And for me, the fact that the Scythians were forever moving westward, eventually making home in Europe, it's that force there in the background that's been moving them out ever since the early days. That's the sort of impression that I get when I look at that history, because of course I'm revisiting it again, just to see if we can deepen our understanding of what the hell it is that's going on. But when you start to fix the Moors, the Tartarian kings as black negroid, but not necessarily from Africa, and then cite the Kuduno-Kalergi piece again, it started to make a little bit of sense. And the reason why Genghis, who were either a Tartarian by blood or a hired general in the same way that King Cyrus was a hired general for the Persians and was invited into Babylon. Then we're perhaps looking at the origins of Lucifer, or Hillel, as his proper name, because it's Latinized, isn't it, Lucifer? Babylon connotations, and obviously being such powerful kings as they were in Babylon, they would have thought themselves to be a heavenly host. Hence the reason why he was cast out of heaven. Not the real heaven, but his own fantasy heaven, perhaps. So, you've got that. All this sort of data starts to pull itself together, but there's a big shift from landmass, from where we think it all went on, to where it really went on. So exoduses and all this malarkey have got nothing to do with North Africa or the Middle East. it was all going on over the other side of Russia. The huge landmass that really we don't know that much about, but have always been told or led to believe that it's just a wasteland. There's the Great Wall of China. What were that for? A very potent force built that. Now, of course, people say today that it's actually facing the other way and that it wasn't built by the Chinese, it was built to keep the Chinese out. Whatever happened, it's a huge construction. And obviously we're built by civilizations that knew what they were doing. So everything's up in arms a bit at the moment. We know that they're pushing Tartaria as the sort of the civilized group that gave us the old architecture, etc. Well, they wouldn't they? Obviously, they want to refocus the world's attention to that part of the world as being pivotal. Kazakhstan is where they're moving London. It all sorts of makes sense in that way. And Genghis stopped at Europe because he'd done a deal with the Venetians and that they were going to take over Europe without actually annihilating it through the fact that they run the banking. So it is getting very interesting, I have to say, when you start to look at it from that perspective, and then you could start to realise and understand why it is that this force has always been in absolute hatred of the Israelites, or the Scythians, or the White Onkeys, and not just the White Onkeys, the Greeks, probably even the North Africa, the Arabs, the Ethiopians, all part and made up of what they class as Israel, being chased by this, this bunch that despised them, that we know as the Judahites. And we referenced the other week the fact that the idea of the word Jew is a very recent thing, and it was not the original, even King James Bible term used, but after a certain point, it was stuck in there everywhere. And we can see and know that the term is actually interpreted as banker. So it does make perfect sense. If you look at it, there's a logic to that sort of, that sort of idea. Of course, it's an idea, but it's well worth at least keeping in your mind, because you never know, your seeking and research may move you to actually get a bit more data in relation to that thing. So obviously then this force is the enemy of everybody other than itself. So that'd be India, that'd be China. In truth, they are the enemy of us all. But by their own arts of deception, which of course is afforded to the deceiver, and the fact that humans like to play that game themselves, that format in and of itself, deception, subversion, has pretty much put us all under its thumb as nations. And we can see that as corporatism, which is the public face of it on the street, you might say, of the Holy See families, who, by their own self-admission, all trace the lineages back to areas found within Persia and across into the other side of Russia. So for me, there is a logic to all this that we've been discussing, that we've explored in these live streams. And of course, the main intent of this evil force is to rid the earth of the Anglo Saxon, us white people. And I have to say, what a mess they've managed to make so far. It's time we started to come together again and think together as one, because they've pretty much subverted all our institutions, through this corporate system. And, you're either going to die on your back or you're going to give it a good fucking fight. And in order to give it a good fight, you've first got to understand the game. You've got to have it in your mind so that you know what it is you're actually doing. So tonight we're going to look and continue with this. We've looked at the real hidden agenda in relation to this banking empire, in relation to what they call Judaism or Jews. Not the Torah Jews, of course, but this Talmudic, Kabbalistic Abad-Lubavitch kind of system, that they just claim to be 100% Khazarian, when, in fact, if you look at it from this other perspective, the Khazars are just a small part of it. It's a much bigger system when you get to the other side of Russia. And the Khazars are just a very small part. A important part, but again, one could claim as victim of it as everybody else. So Mordor is over there, the other side of Russia, and Stalin did form a new place for what they called the Jews in his term. Yet everybody focuses to Israel. That's just a fire starter, and it's run by Russians. We know this. But when we say Russians, we're talking about Bolshevism, because of course Russia hasn't been Russia since the Bolshevik Revolution. And of course today on Blighty we've got a right bunch of paedophilic Bolsheviks in the cabinet. Jimmy Savile's vagina being a prime example. So on the back of this idea that I'm hearing on the street, that people are saying, well, who would you rather be ruled by? Which I find rather pathetic and cowardly in its extreme, just by definition. We will take a look at the front to that bigger hidden imperial system as it's being played out on Blighty. And we're going to look at it from their own mouth. We don't have to throw accusation. We're going to say, this is what they're saying, this is what they're doing, and we can see clearly that our entire state, government and crown are facilitating this, because of course they are the beneficiaries of it. So we'll just go through this bar document and then we'll get straight in. We'll have a look at who's here and then we'll get straight in to just expanding on exactly how it is on the ground right now. So the bar operates under legal fiction, not reality. Legality is not reality. Statutory enforcement does not equate to true law. Bar attorneys do not practice law but administer statutes, which are corporate rules designed for profit. Every case is structured around monetisation rather than truth, equity or justice. The bar system functions as an arm of maritime piracy. Bar attorneys are officers of the court first, not representatives of the people. Their primary allegiance is to the corporate court system, which profits from legal proceedings. Legal proceedings are structured as contracts and commercial transactions, ensuring continued financial control over estate trusts and personal assets. Well, they're not actually operating even according to contracts. Or the contracts that they're playing with are hidden. We call blind adhesion contracts. A true judiciary exists only under law, not statutes. Law originates from divine authority, which of course is your dominion right, which is what the crown takes into trust. And then, because your divine authority is your dominion right, unalienable. And in that case, you are then sovereign. No man can tell another man. It's that kind of thing. And the crown has took that in trust. And so therefore, invested in the monarch is the sovereignty of the people. Okay? And that's why you see the word people in the United States Constitution. It's why you see it in the English Constitution. You don't see it in the legal system. It's person. It's human. Okay? We've gone through the construct we call human. We've gone through where it comes from. This is the Vatican. And we've gone through the data in relation to what they make on the back of that construct while you're still in the womb, and that is the fact that they have to afford that human all the rights of person. We've done all this, so if you've been keeping up, you are very well versed, and you've got so many points of reference now to formulate the reality of to what's real, and not this spell-casting garbage and word wizardry that they've pumped down all over us for centuries. At least I hope I've been able to give it in a way that you can grasp that. The bar has transformed the judiciary into an exclusive private guild, making true law inaccessible to the people. moving forward. President Trump's decision to sever the ABA is a significant step, but the issue extends beyond a single association. The entire bar system must be exposed and dismantled as it operates as a fraudulent monetized structure designed to control individuals through deception and financial manipulation. Exactly what we've got experienced in this last year. Restoring true law is essential, but we need to do it. And then this piece of art here fucks itself up and says no person. So can you see? You can be really savvy with a lot of data, a lot of information about this difference between law and statute, and still make such a cock-up as to use the word person. Do you know what I mean? You can be, and this is why we know lawyers in truth, and even some barristers, do not know everything. You know what I'm saying? We don't know everything. Ignorance it's rife. But that's not, in and of itself, a terrible thing. No man can know everything. It's impossible. But just looking at that, restoring true law is essential. No person. So whoever's put this together is still stuck and would therefore give joinder in these star chambers. Yeah? Should be subject to a system built on fraud and coercion. Justice may be reclaimed by the people. So they got it right there. Free from corporate interests and private guilds. But can you see what I mean? You can forgive yourself for not knowing everything. It's such a minefield. And like I said, me and my colleague, the benefactor, 3 years ago, well, nearly 4 years ago, we went back to the beginning and we decided to go through every single part etymologically. And it took us through all sorts of things. And then, of course, I had to stop and I jumped on this court case. However, doing this last piece for the Chancery has pretty much solved the language, in my opinion. There may be a little bit more work to do in order to bring forward the true trustee, which is the Registrar General. And a lot of the stuff that we all think we have to do is pretty much unnecessary. It's unnecessary, and I think, again, is a distraction, a diversion, just to take you off the scent of it. But that's to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. But it's been it's not been lost this 12 months by any chance. Now, so people are putting their hopes in Trump, and rightly so, because on the one hand, a lot of what he's doing makes sense, but then when you look at the other side, which we've explored, that makes even more sense. Now, but we've got to go back to the chief Rooney telegraphers that we have out there, and have been so for a long time. That's the Simpsons, and this is what they've portrayed in their episodes, and I think this is quite some time ago. But interesting. April the 12th, 2025, the end of an era. Now, I mean, yeah, if that's the case, we're not that far off, are we? If that's the intentioned plan. Now, bear in mind, they can always lengthen the plan, they can always change dates, etc., which they do quite often. But I've said before, they're going to, like they did with JFK, they'll raise up everybody's expectations and hope in one guy, and then cut it off. It creates a trauma to such an extent that people become sort of rabbit in the headlights for enough time for them to shove in a load of shit. 9/11, another trauma ritual. In came the Patriot Act. You know what I mean? In come all these domestic provisions that take away all your rights and further the expansion of this legal statutory system. Contingency Act we got here in the UK corporation, over and above English law, because that's all you're going to get in these bar association courts. So again, it's not pie in the sky, these concepts that we've explored in these few years, 5 years nearly we're getting to, as I've been doing these live streams. And of course, in the website kind of thing, it's detailed stuff to just as a sort of reference to a lot of the stuff that I've studied. However, that's only a fraction. What's on that website is an absolute fraction of the data that I've sort of took on board over the years. Simply because it were all on all the other websites that got took down. And in truth, it does have an effect, and you don't necessarily want to be putting it all back together again, because you never know what's coming around the corner anyway. But as it stands in Switzerland, they're very good, and I've had no problems. So again, it's just, there's no pie in the sky in this data that we explore in these live streams. It's good stuff, and it's well sourced in truth. So tonight, what are we looking at? Let me just now here's an interesting one. I'll just, before we get stuck into this, but I've mentioned John Coleman and his books, one of which is Committee 300. So on page 164, he says euthanasia for the terminally ill and the aged shall be compulsory. And this was wrote in the 90s, remember. No city shall be larger than a predetermined number as described in the work of Kalergi. Essential workers will be moved to other cities if the one they are in becomes overpopulated. Other non-essential workers will be chosen at random and sent to underpopulated cities to fill quotas. At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050, by means of limited wars, organised epidemics of fatal, rapid-acting diseases and starvation. Energy, food and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, and then spreading to other races. The population of Canada, Western Europe and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on any other continents, until the world population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million, and then we can't actually see that. Well, I think that's because in most cases, the rest of the world has been suffering these massive wars and depopulation agendas, because it's been carried out by the force who's rooted itself in the West as a front. So it's not that it's going to happen here first, it's been happening in the rest of the world for centuries, So, there you go. It's nothing new, and John Coleman, an excellent reference, because he was in MI6 and he was in Africa, and he realised very quickly that far from his intention, which was to fight communism, that the British Empire was actually installing communism in every nation it entered. So, there's so much information that you get from John Coleman, it's quite ridiculous. Now, we're going to go to a browser, and just to continue what I spoke of last week in relation to the water. So, look at this. This has been in Parliament. So, let's have a look. Let's turn it up.
Almost 100.
Just let me start again.
The 35 years before privatisation, almost 100 reservoirs were built. In the 35 years since privatisation, not one major English reservoir has been built. But it gets worse, because in that same period, private water companies have sold off 25 reservoirs without replacing one. Instead of investing in resilience, they've extracted value. £72 billion paid out in dividends while pipes leak, rivers choke, and the public pays the price. My honourable friend says, how can we afford it? How can we not afford it? That's not mismanagement, it's a betrayal. And if the scientists tell us the climate crisis is an existential threat to humanity and to this country, then we must treat it as such, an existential conflict. In that context, these actions of these companies, setting off reservoirs, failing to invest, polluting our water, they're not just negligent, they are acts that actively undermine our our national water security. In any other existential crisis, we might call that what it is, sabotage. And in a time of national peril, sabotage has another name, treason.
Now then, you see, it's coming. People are starting to get it. People are starting to recognise what's going on. And this, whoever that guy is, kudos to him, I love him. Because he's obviously aware of England. He's aware of what it was that kept this place free and true to your divine right, if you were capable of pulling in and administrating your estate. So kudos to this guy, whoever he is. I'm well impressed. Clive Lewis, or is he called Clive Lewis? Maybe. Yeah, Clive Lewis MP. What a geezer. So he's a guy you want to watch for and a guy you should support. I'm well impressed with that. Now, so I'll have a quick look who's in, and then we're going to get into some rather perplexing data, but we're exploring, and we're going to put the next raft of data on the high table for us to dissect, which is a follow-on from all that we've discussed in relation to the Third Temple and the Abad Lubavitchers, who we know, in most cases, are controlling our body politic. So, Lone Rizzer says, evening inmates, evening Sean, evening to you, Lone Rizzer. Kerry says, love from Ireland, love back to Ireland. John says, hello lads, hello John. And John says, good vid. Well done, John. Benefactor says, hi Sean, the Wise Asylum team. Evening, Benefactor. PY Music says, good evening all, evening Paul. Slipknot says, alright Sean, alright everyone. Who's getting bollocked tonight then? Oh, ooh, and we've just been doing a lot of bollocking. Well, let's be honest, guys. You know, one or two little shitbags have been causing a little bit of havoc there in the old chat. Do guys that are solid here, don't be afraid to put these people right. You know what I'm saying? Don't let these Johnny-come-latelys come in here and start causing it. But of course, I can do this bollocking as well on here, and I can access that. So, yeah, we're not accepting it. But yeah, if somebody... Look, yeah, I've said to you before, you can all put opinions up, that's fine. But if you're going to get personal and stupid, you're going to get short thrift from me, because we don't need it. It's as simple as that. The first week it happened, I missed it because I were a bit too focused to what I was doing. It wasn't until later on that I could see what had been going on. So hopefully nobody slipped now. Evening to you. Ulick says, hey Sean and chat, evening Ulick. Big E's, evening everyone. Hey Sean, hope you're all well, my friend. It's good to be back here, and it's good to have you back, Big E. AMG, evening Sean, Stumpy Jane, Rizzler. Me, House of CC, yeah, another and all non-mutants. Yeah, I mean, for God's sake. I think I've an idea where that's coming from, to be honest. We'll say no more, but I think I've an idea where it's coming from. He's playing with fire. If it's who I think it is, I'll just say to you, lad, you really are playing with fire. But carry on, I don't mind. Paul, Ulick says, hit the like, it's free, yeah, get it hit. Paul says, good evening, Sean and fellow mates, evening, Paul. John says, the wave of hand and a glass of wine. Good stuff, John. June says, good evening, Sean and chat, evening, June. One reason gives it thumbs up to Ulick and AMG. Jane says, evening, Sean, chatters, golden boy, and Riz. Evening, Jane. Ritzy Gitsy brother, says Ulick. Good stuff, Lone Rizzler, hi, Jane. Lex Smart, evening, Sean, and all evening, Lex. Jerry, isn't that a maxim a trust will not be allowed to fail for the lack of a trustee? Yes, it is. We'll have to wait and see how this plays, because we've pretty much solidified. And as I say, you know, when you get up to proper law, it's simplicity. It's a lot simpler than the shit that they have you meshed in at the bottom end. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to comment any further, because obviously we don't know what they're going to do. Where are we there? Ed Freedom says, evening Sean and all, evening Ed, welcome. Jerry says, Ulick, Lone, Gitsio, yep. John says, good vid again, thanks John. Benefactor life for the mix. Escrow account, yep, absolutely, Benefactor. Jerry says, escrow means it's held in the account until matter us settle, deal done, yea, nay. John Francis, Trump doesn't decide what suit he wears. Yeah, quite having that as well. Mew says, good morning, afternoon, evening, all in Wise Asylum. Evening to you, Mew. How are you doing, me old China? There we go. Right. Let's see if that works. Where are we? John says, I'm Mew. Evening to you. Yeah. Mew says, still not a mod. Chance it might be me getting blocked, AMG. Well, I've just made you one. Because I couldn't do it in back end. But I've just turned you into one on here. So it hasn't shown up. I don't know why, but you should have. You now, according to that, I've just hit you as a mod Mew. So we'll see if it comes up. Okay. So I've just, that was my intention, to do it while we were live. So I've done it, as it says. We'll see what happens, bud. Mew says, good vid, John. Good vid, mate. Mark says, Mark for evening show and all evening, Mark. Jurisdiction changing through the words for the unsuspecting mind. Jerry says, I saw this and immediately thought of last week's show, Sean, draining the resources. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Mew sent me that. Brilliant. I didn't know. Dom from Sheep Farm has been talking about the reservoir level for a long while. Good stuff there, Dom. Benefactor Life, the meet. Yeah, Benefactor suggested in the week that perhaps we may organise a get-together. Maybe for a weekend. It's sort of like, we've a couple of good hotels up here. So if anybody be interested in, let's say, a get-together, as many as you want, if we say something like July or August, and we can all meet up properly, and then... So if anybody be interested in that, let me know by your email over the course, and we'll arrange something. Because I think it is a good idea. Give everybody a chance. We can all meet up and have a good, jolly shindig. Anyway, there you go. Jerry says escrow means it's held in the account. Oh, we've done that. Where am I? You've done that. Don from Sheet, yeah, done that as well. John, was Whaley Bridge Reservoir a hoax? Whaley Bridge Reservoir. I don't know, John, to be honest. Tree, nice. Sean, join late. On my mobile as usual, buffering on the TV. Evening, Treen. LFX, thumbs up. Lone Rizzler. There's definitely something going on with water, Jerry. You've been watching a reservoir that I've been familiar with for about 45 years. The last 5 years have been very odd. Canal breach in Macclesfield last week. Well, we had one here as well a couple of years ago. And it took them yonks to fix it. So I don't know what they were up to. So yeah, I sort of thought it might have been deliberate, but Jerry says, interesting loan. I'd be interested. Congratulations, AMG. Deep breaths. Good stuff. So yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Maybe July or August, whenever. But anybody that might be interested, we'll have a proper gig. We'll get up and get together up here. In North. Or if you're up in Aggie Squeeze of Land, that's Earth. Right, so chaps, I'm gonna... So, well, Charles Spy, I'll put that up under the video, and I thought I didn't do anything last week. I noticed I haven't even... So I just put the doc up or something. I didn't even get to that video to go to edit it till like Thursday, so my apologies, guys, if you were all waiting for that stuff to go. But I have been a bit busy. Now, so the first thing I want to do is let's remind ourselves of this house of Palavicini. Okay, because these boys are 1L.
of all dimensions of sacred knowledge. This is the ultimate goal according to the esoterical dimension, according to the Jihad Akbar. As it was mentioned, he can act according to a symbolic language.
Right, so there you go. Palafasini, very, very embedded and running Sunni Islam and the Sufi Islam as well, okay? So the Magi, we're talking there. Now, they've been running England on behalf of the foreign agents since they got the Tudors on, okay? We've gone through that, so it's the same beneficiaries no matter what race they have on these lands. Muslims, you need to take note. You are bitches of this system. You're no different. It's just that you're not as smart and bright enough to see it. Now, next one. Because we're going to look at this stuff from their own mouths, okay? Let's not...
They will be annihilated.
Okay.
The enemies of Klal Yisrael will gather to attack Yerushalayim in the end of days, and they will be annihilated as part of the wars of Gog and Magog, which are also discussed by the Navi Cheskel and the Navi Zechariah. Gog and Magog is that Esav will convene on Yerushalayim to attack the Arabs, and they'll both basically destroy each other. We wish both sides Hatzlacha Rabbah, and after doing that, Klal Yisrael will reign supreme. That is the concept of Milchemes Gog and Magog according to Abarbanel. I will gather all the Goyim, v'hayradatim, and I will bring them down El Emek Yehoshaphat, to the valley of Yehoshaphat. V'nishpat ti'imam, I will indict them. God will cause that all the nations will gather in the Milchama of Gog and Magog, which was prophesied by Yecheskel. And the Malbim gives us some information that the Bnei Edom will come to fight with the Bnei Yishmael. And then the Bnei Yishmael will fight with the Bnei Edom. And God will instigate this. Now, it's not hard to see how one day there could be a battle between the West and the Muslim world, right? That's not a hard thing to imagine. Right? It's basically the stage is set. Right? It's only a matter of someone pressing the button. So that's the prediction of Milchemes Gog and Magog according to the Malbim. Edom will be aroused to conquer Eretz Yisrael. Basically like this is the prediction. America will come and say enough is enough, those Arabs in the Holy Land, and they're going to come to the Middle East. They'll knock off the Egyptians, who are from Yishmael. And then the other Yishmaelim who don't like the Egyptians will say, look, we don't like the Egyptians, we don't like the West even more. And then the Yishmaelim will try to take revenge from Rome, from America, and they will massacre the West, and then the West will massacre the East, v'shalom al Yisrael. And this war will happen 3 times. There's a tradition that in Milchemes Gog and Magog, there can be 3 rounds. Or maybe World War I, World War II, World War III. Who knows?
And is this Israel we're talking about at the other side of Russia? I believe it is. Okay? So everything's smoke and mirrors. Now, I've talked about this many times. Is your evidence.
See how this can change not only the air in your home, but also your health. Introducing a revolutionary pocket...
Le Mashiach viendra que quand Edom, l'Europe, la chrétienté sera totalement tombée. Donc je vous pose la question, c'est une bonne nouvelle que l'islam envahisse l'Europe? C'est une excellente nouvelle, ça annonce l'envie de Mashiach. Excellente nouvelle. Vous allez payer très cher les Européens. Mais à un point, vous n'avez même pas notion de quoi on parle. Et vous n'aurez pas au fil. Parce que tout le mal que vous avez fait à Israël, vous le paierez au centuple. Quand l'Italie disparaîtra, quand Edom, c'est pour ça que le QG de la chrétienté qui vient de Esav se trouve là-bas, quand cet endroit-là disparaîtra, et c'est ce que veut faire l'islam, l'islam c'est le balai d'Israël, sachez-le.
At the end of days, you're going to need the iron of Esav, which represents Edom, which is the West, Europe, and the Americas, to get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically Arabs and Muslims. How in the world was this ever going to happen if not for this refugee crisis? At the end of days, you're going to have this intermixing between Esav, Edom, which is the West, and the East, which is the Muslims and the Arabs.
Now, in real terms, Edom is actually the Judahites, believe it or not, and the Phoenicians. See, they got it all upside down and fucked up on purpose. But of course, before they can achieve that, they have to get the white male conscripted. Now, I put a video up on the Facebook today that's quite alarming, but you need to watch it. Once they get this war game going, that's what they do, and how they get rid of the white males, or any males in any nation, and forcing them into the war. So if you spend a penny on Ukraine, you're a part of that.
Making this famous influx into the world. And they're going to have children, I don't want to say by the dozens, but they're going to have a far larger birth rate than the indigenous people there, and they're going to sort of conquer by number. And there are many different sources for this. One of them in Hezbollah, chapter 14, and many other sources as far as this is concerned, where it's mentioned very, very vividly what will happen to the Jews and what will happen to Yerushalayim and what will happen to the world at that time, where there will be many, many people killed and so on and so forth. So the idea of having these refugees come into Europe, it's no longer a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's just simply a fulfillment of what it was meant to be all along. This is the fulfillment of the Chazal and the prophecies. This has to happen, and this is just another sign that we're nearing, the completion of this tikkun of the entire world.
How lovely. Now, so according to these guys, Islam is just the broom that they're using for now. For now. Because I'll tell you now, there's a piece where it makes it clear that Islam is being set up so badly, and China is going to play a big role in annihilating Islam. Because they've already declared it a mental illness.
Which speak about the rise of the Ummah. We must appreciate those texts. Uthmani Khilafah as well.
Yeah.
We had that.
Yeah.
And we can do that again. Uniting politically.
Yes.
Creating a political system, uniting.
Yep.
Islam, when it entered different areas and nations, it Islamized the cultures.
Yeah.
Islamized, if I can use, this is a philosophical term, pretty modern, used by some great Muslim thinkers. Islamized language, Islamized cultures, Islamized thinking patterns of those people. The leader in any country, what will he change? The economic systems are there, the political, it will take time. So I don't think the change will happen on ground and at the top level as well. We have texts which speak about Khilafah, which speak about the rise of the Ummah. We must appreciate those texts. Uthmani Khilafah as well.
Yeah.
We had that.
Yeah.
And we can do that again. Uniting politically.
Yes.
Creating a political system, uniting.
Yep.
Islam, when it entered different areas and nations, it Islamized the cultures.
Yeah.
Islamized, if I can use, this is a philosophical term, pretty modern, used by some great Muslim thinkers. Islamized language, Islamized cultures, Islamized thinking patterns of those people.
You can see that taking place right now, can you not? And the Bolshevik bastard called Jimmy Savile's vagina and fat fingers are facilitating that very move. Why? Because they control it. Palavicini.
Yeah, I heard the comments earlier you was making about Suella, some of the comments she made earlier this week, and I don't actually believe that these Islamists have got control of our country, but what I do believe is they've got control of Khan and they've got control of London. And again, this stems with Khan. He's actually given our capital city away to his mates. We've got Stalin. Beware, because if you let Labour in through the back door, expect more of this and expect our cities to be taken over by these lunatics. I heard that.
He's not wrong. No. This is one for Muslims to keep their eyes on, because you're being set up. This is what they're doing to mosques. Over 150,000 in China. They're not in any Arabic writing either. And they're the biggest consumers of pork. Which is another oddity when you consider what the Bolshevik elite said about Chinese the other week, because that's another bunch that don't like the people. That's going on all over China, and they're encamping them, and from all accounts they're taking their organs. Again, another one. Knocking them down. Get out, we've had enough. You've declared a mental illness. You know? It's real, it's going on. It's happening. Now, America.
Will be. The flag of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah will be, inshallah, on the White House if the American people are waking up now.
Allah does say that the whole world eventually will be under His ruling. The world will come down to where everybody obeys the laws of God. Simple as that.
We will force Islamic Sharia, inshallah. Here, and it will be. The flag of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah will be, inshallah, on the White House if the American people are waking up now.
Well, I think you had that a little bit with Obama. But which God is that? I mean, I read your Quran. You guys really don't understand your own book. And that's a fact.
But I cannot live in an Islamist theocracy. I can live in a Christian government based on their constitution, because that is where peace lies. I can't live in a place where ISIS rules the area. That's no Muslim with a brain that works would want to live under ISIS, right? And when we come to the West trying to warn the governments and intelligence agencies about what is happening, about the people we fled from, we have this new political correctness agenda that tells us, oh, we're the racists, we're the ones who are traitors, and the extremists needs to be understood and embraced, and they have a point, let's listen to them, and sooner or later they're in parliament, they're in government, and there you go in America, you have Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib changing the narrative in Washington that is now affecting the whole, influencing and affecting the narrative around the world, attacking Jews, attacking Christians, and this is just the beginning. So if Christians don't wake up, Christian leaders don't wake up, then we Muslims who fled from extremists can't help you anymore. We tried warning you.
You see, that's the thing. You Muslims born in the West, are you really going to degenerate yourself to that attitude? Because if you are, then you were never very smart anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's a degeneracy, and there's a Muslim that's escaped from exactly where this ISIS shit's going on. Are you really going to allow yourself to degenerate to such a degree that you're going to suck into that ISIS? Because you'll be under its whim and willies as well, and it's just ridiculous that people are not seeing this. This is an enemy of everybody. Why has that bastard not been arrested? Yeah? Fuck the Jews, rape the daughters. What the fuck? On the fucking London street. Where are the fucking police? Too busy putting the fucking eyeliner on, aren't they? It's ridiculous that this shit is being allowed. Well, it will be, because the Crown and the Bolshevik governments are allowing it. In fact, they're promoting it, protecting it.
فلما رفضوا الأمر الشرعي وهو أن يعبدوا الله تبارك وتعالى باختيارهم جعلهم الله تبارك وتعالى عبيدا لعبيده رغما عنهم. وهذا ليس بعيب، لأنهم المعتدون، هم الذين رفضوا أن يعبدوا الله وعاشوا في أرضه سبحانه وتعالى فجعلهم عبيدا لبعض عبيده. وأنا أرجو أن الإنسان لا يخجل من دينه ويقول لا هذا قبل والإسلام لا يدعو إلى هذا. لا، كن قويا في دينك، أظهر دينك. نعم هذا ديني، نعم. الذي لا يرضى أن يعبد الله تبارك وتعالى فإنه يستعبد أو يدفع الجزية أو يدخل في الإسلام أو يقاتل. هذه الأحوال الأربعة أبدا، لا يوجد حال خامس.
That's for you Muslims. Are you really going to degenerate yourself to that degree? Really? I don't think so. You're not that stupid, are you guys? You're really not that stupid. I can't believe it. Oh, there's no sound on this one. You took it off. The Broom. Yeah. Get rid of the white males. You women, you feminist super women. Oh, what a mess it's going to be for you if you don't all start to get a grip. Remember, this is not me saying this.
قتل للمسلمين سبايا في غزوة أوطاس وغنموا منهم أموالا ونساء فتحرج الصحابة لأن المعروف أن ملك اليمين يتسرى بها مالكها له أن يتسرى بها وأن يطأها بملك اليمين وملك اليمين أقوى من عقد الزواج فيبيح للسيد أن يطأ مملوكته وهذا ما يسمى بالتسري. لكن حصل عند الصحابة حرج لأن الله جل وعلا حرم ذوات الأزواج وهؤلاء لهن أزواج من الكفار فأنزل الله جل وعلا إلا ما ملكت أيمانكم والمحصنات من النساء إلا ما ملكت أيمانكم وذلك أنه ينفسخ عقدها من الكافر إذا سبيت صارت ملكا للمسلمين انفسخ عقد نكاح الكافر عليها وصارت ملكا للمسلم فله أن يتسرى بها.
Not the best, is it, chaps? You know what I mean?
Muslims go and conquer the adjacent country. What do? We kill them all? No. The Prophet says, the first thing you do is call them to Islam. If they refuse, then tell them Allah obliged upon you to pay taxation. In return, when enemy comes and attack your country, you don't fight. We Muslims protect you. Subhanallah, for this little money? Yes. And you enjoy sitting in your homes and in your country and live your life normally. But the ruling is for Sharia. So you do not open nightclubs, you do not fornicate. If they refuse, then we have to fight. And if we fight you, then we capture you, you become our slaves, and we take your land, and you take because you refuse. I give you two good options in the coming 40, 50 years when the Muslims become strong as they're supposed to be. When Muslims go and conquer the adjacent country.
Ladies and gentlemen. Now then.
While the visitors get their first taste of Islamic prayers, it's come to Ahmed's attention that Isaac isn't dressed properly for the occasion.
Pull your socks up a bit more.
in prayer, he had his socks under his knees and he was wearing shorts, so his knees were showing. And in Islam, you need to have from your belly button to your knees covered to be praying, and his knees were showing. So I asked him if he can pull his socks up to cover it up.
Quietly, will you stand up?
Sometimes in trying to educate others in our values, we may come across as rude or abrupt. And that is a concern I have with some of our students. And that is something which they have to learn how not to do.
I have never prayed before. I've never even thought about it, but I've meditated before. And it was really nice just sort of being in the room with them and having that unity of everyone doing something together at the same time and doing the same thing. And it felt really together.
Oh dear heck.
While the visitors get the...
Okay.
The government by people, that the legislators are human beings, not the creator of human beings. That is democracy. So if you mean by democracy that you come up with your own law and then you punish people according to this own law, if you call this democracy, then Islam outright rejects that. Because this kind of democracy entails injustice to human beings. You don't know what is suitable for them, Allah knows.
Even Muslims are using the term human beings, when the Quran makes it very clear they have to go to the Bible. I mean, it's so ridiculous. The only woman mentioned in the Quran is Mary. The only woman. And it's just, chapter 3 verse 54, it says, best of all deceivers is Allah. It's just, how can people not see that the Quran, you've got to be so evolved to read it, to not get trapped by it. It's ridiculous. But it makes it very clear, if you're to follow the Bible, then you can't follow everything that goes against the Bible and still believe that you're in sync with the Bible. It's just, it's obscene, in truth. It really is. I don't know, honestly, it's beyond my comprehension that these people don't see through it when you've been in the West for so long.
Allah knows. So if you're going to contradict and oppose the revelation of Allah, then we say no democracy. The government...
I mean, they've got it wrapped up. You know what I mean? And if you come against them and then they're thick and they run away because they can't answer it, oh, the curse of Allah. They've got an answer for everything so that they can remain infants throwing the dummies out and running off and just calling your names. They can't debate you. And it's sad. It's sad. They should know better.
Muslims must believe in the implementation of the Sharia. As we believe, the Sharia is the solution to the problems of mankind. But you don't say, I want to implement it now when you're not even strong. You want to implement it now when you don't even have power. You want to implement it now when you don't even have support. You want to implement it in a Western country. If we want to see the Sharia being implemented and we want to see the Khilafah of the Islam being existing, then we need to strive for it. But as long as we are sitting down, just talking, and not taking the practical ways to reach it, and not doing what we need to do, and starting from our own backyards, that's never going to happen.
As I've said before, when you read the Quran and then you look at the Sharia is not representative of the Quran. Now, that's important for Muslims to understand because you're submitting to the Sharia. And if you're claiming to be a Muslim and you're not, kafir. And you know what your book says you have to do about that. These imams are leading you astray. And they're doing it because you've not read it. And if you do read it, you're still taking the interpretation that these same imams who have done the deals in Kazakhstan with Palafasini, to take it off the book. The Sharia has to represent the Quran if you're submitting to the will of your God. It's that simple. That's logic. And, if you read that Quran and look at your Sharia, it is so off the wall that your imams are leading you into kafir. It's that simple.
The principles of war in Islam.
Right.
Two things you need to understand about Islam and the principles of war in Islam. One is the law of taqiyya, which means lying and deception. It means that a Muslim man can lay his hand on the Quran and swear that he is telling the truth, knowing that he is lying, but also knowing that the Quran will forgive him because he is advancing the cause of Islam. The second thing you need to know about is that the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, which is an Islamic principle of war and a model on how to deceive your enemy when you have to sign peace treaties with your enemy. And it is based on an example by Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad was attacking the Meccans and their caravans when he was living in Medina. One day he attacked them because this is how he got the goodies. He would attack them, rob them, and spread the goodies among his men. And this is how he was able to recruit, because this is how people made money without working. And so he attacked the Meccan caravans. When he realized he's not able to defeat the Meccans in that city of Al-Hudaybiyah, in that place, he signed a 10-year treaty with them. Does that sound familiar? A 10-year treaty with them that says he will not attack them, he will have peace with them, he will not declare war on them. Muhammad used the treaty for 2 years to build his military, strengthen his army, and when he realized he was strong enough to attack his enemies when they least expected it, because they thought they had a peace treaty with Muhammad, he broke the treaty, attacked them 2 years later, and Mecca fell within 24 hours because they were not expecting the attack. And that became a principle of war in Islam. And to give you an example of how that is practiced, this is why anything signed with Iran means nothing to them.
See? As I said last week, they are slowly using the art of war, and they're dismembering the enemy before the attack. It's a war doctrine, and I've said this before. We have to be very careful because it's real.
Meeting. As soon as the Simon, we've got space. Simon, speak at the top. Simon, I can't speak. Simon, you don't let me speak. Simon. No. It's a simple question because I'm going to go if I can't speak. If I'm not on the top table speaking to the people of Rochdale, I'm going to leave. I'm not waiting till the end. I'm either part of the meeting or I'm not. Which is it? It's your call, eh? Which is it? Well, I'm not pointing you. I'm asking you a simple question. Am I part of the meeting or not? Right.
Oh dear, yeah, that's racism. But
can I come into the meeting? As soon as
you see, it's happening and people are not paying attention. Well, you better start paying attention because these Bolsheviks are making sure this goes undercover. How the mosque is just a bank and it extorts the money, its balance sheet from its community by this method and others. And then that money is then lent to its own employees and they expand the capital and asset base around it. So it's buying houses. You know what I'm saying? It's like here in Accrington. There's a premier family who's Muslim and they owned a big paper factory. And basically, he's the family that the councillors are pretty much obeying. So it's all about money. And mosques are just banks and they extort it from the communities. Now these Johnny-come-lately immigrants that are coming in are fresh in, they don't know any different. But you guys that have been born here, do you want your women to be subject to ISIS? Because you will be. You fall into it easily because you're already Muslims, but you know yourselves. There's a major difference between the way you have dealt Islam here amongst your communities and the way ISIS, or the places that you came from originally, your parents. And of course, in the last 5 years, they have gone out their way to systematically make sure that the older school religious people who have seen the difference and allowed you, your younger generation, to be a bit more free, gone. You've got to start seeing it like this. Yeah, Is this what's going on in the mosques?
That Islam and the Sharia is unstoppable in Europe.
Stoning for adultery, cutting off hands for stealing, death for renouncing Islam. This group of men is trying to enforce Sharia law in the UK. They've started a campaign to make certain areas of London and other cities Islamic law-controlled zones, starting with Walthamstow, East London.
Muslims will be commanding good and forbidding evil, presenting Islam as an alternative to the Muslim and the non-Muslim community. Ultimately, we believe that Muslims can live together, trade according to the Sharia, resolve their problems according to the Sharia, and even police themselves to a large extent. Hopefully one day to have Islamic Emirates, which will have authority locally, security locally, and even provide welfare locally.
Chowdhury and his friends are fly-posting parts of London with large Muslim populations. They want to ban drinking, gambling, and playing music. And they say they've got bands of young men ready to patrol and enforce Sharia law by any means.
Yeah, how's that going to work? Every single young Muslim born in this country loves this music in his car. They get as pissed as us English. You've got to see, guys, you Muslims that are born here, you're not going to enjoy the shit that's pouring in with these immigrants. You're not going to enjoy it. These imams are twisting your melon, man. They're not abiding by the Quran. They're creating a Sharia that's against the Quran, which then gives the ability for you to be judged because you're kafir. They know it. You don't. And this is why they can do and get away with this stuff. Same way they've done it to Christians, same way they've done it to the Torah Jews. They get you to go off your book, off the morality, then they can judge you. That's the way it works, and it's not just you Muslims. This has happened to all religions. It's just that you're the youngest, and so you're the last. But they've got an agenda for you guys, and it's not what you think.
People die every year because of the alcohol. We are sick and tired of democracy, and we are here to provide you an alternative, and that is the Sharia. That is Islam. Our people of Britain, take a look around you. Do you not see the corruption? Do you not see the oppression? Look to how your democracy it fails in the coalition government. Look to how your democracy it fails when all of you wanted no war in Iraq. But people of Britain, wake up. We as the Muslims have woken up a long time ago, and we are here to tell you that we will never stop struggling. We will never stop calling. We will never stop striving until the black flag of Islam is all over the world.
I mean, you can see why China has labelled it a mental illness, can't you? So now let's just have a look at some of the misconceptions that these imams have presented to these young Muslims. And it's massive. I mean, it's massive. I've wrote a lot of stuff down here, you know. I mean, and it's so important. And so let's look at one of the main tacit doctrines of what actually happened to Muhammad. Now, in a particular chapter, Allah is talking about Muhammad and says that if he's a liar, then Allah would cut off his aorta. Okay? That's what he says. Now, how did Muhammad die? Most Muslims are told he died of old age. He didn't die of old age. You've got to go to the hadith. And he said to Iyasha, who was 18 when he died, he said to her, I feel my aorta being cut off from the poison of the lamb that the Jewish woman fed me. Well, obviously they didn't use the word Jewish because we know that's a recent invention. But the threat that Allah made and said, if he's a liar, I will cut off his aorta, is exactly, by his own admission, how he ended his life. You see, but these imams that are taking Muslims off have told them that he died of old age, and he didn't. Here's another blatant lie by these imams running these banks to get the young uns to submit and give the cash.
Promises a martyr in the name of Islam, 72 virgins. Is that true?
It is not true.
Manji says that several scholars studying the original text came to a startling realization.
Nowhere in the Quran does it promise 72 virgins, 70 virgins, 48 virgins. What it promises, as far as heaven goes, is something lush. The Arabic word for virgin has been mistranslated. The original word that was used in the Quran was the word for raisin, not virgin. In other words, that martyrs would get raisins in heaven, not virgins.
72 raisins. Imagine the surprise of the terrorist who expected something completely different.
Exactly, because that's what his imams told him. To get him to do a terrible act.
Your spouse.
But can they lie in the context of, for example, if one says, I sense that you've got a second wife, can he say, no, I don't?
Yes, you can. You can say that.
You can say that.
Yes, I personally believe this is the Prophet said you can do it.
White lies?
It doesn't have to be white. It can be a black lie.
Or she just asks him, where were you last night?
Yeah, but even that, he can lie. The man can do it. It's up to the man. No woman can take that right man away from the man.
I would think it's so disrespectful for my husband to go and marry somebody else secretly. That to me is cheating.
So lying is not allowed except for three things. One of them is hadith al-rajul limra'ati. That when a man speaks to his wife.
Allah is testing her to see how she responds.
Yeah.
That's enough. If she decides to do the opposite, which is, throw the divorce card or throw this card, then ultimately she's falling into the act of disobedience.
Islamically, there is no problem in a man getting married to another woman in Islam without the first wife's knowledge. There's no...
You're not okay with it? Sister...
It's a no from me.
Yeah, no. Sister Taylor?
And I won't be happy with it.
Sisters are under the impression that there is a man out there that is not polygamous. Because you guys are monogamous by nature, meaning you just want your husband and you're happy with your husband. We are not created like that.
She's being bad. She can take money with him.
This is why my Muslim friends used to say to me, we can't marry Asians born here, Shawnee, because they won't say kitchen. Yeah? It's, this is how Muslims suffer the banking system. It's victims like everybody, on every one of us.
Islamophobia Awareness Month. But wait, what does that mean?
It means that I want to see a world free of discrimination and hatred against Muslims.
It means that I want to show the positive contributions that Muslims make to society.
It means that I care about equality and fairness in society.
Well, we've just looked at a few things there, darling, that suggest that actually there's no fairness or justice at all, especially if you're a woman.
I want to champion diversity and inclusion, empower my Muslim friends, colleagues and neighbours.
Diversion and inclusivity. And we've just seen what happens if you don't obey.
You can be a supporter, no matter who you are or where you come from. We want as many people as possible to get involved.
By becoming a supporter of Islamophobia Awareness Month, you are contributing to making the world a better place and putting an end to Islamophobia.
Support us today, become a supporter.
Support us now, 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 become a supporter.
Support us now and visit islamophobia-awareness.org.
So, Islamophobia, they're saying. So let's just remind ourselves of something. Oh, where did I put it? No. Oh, bugger. I'll tell you what I did. I took it off. So let me just... Oh, I'll tell you what it is. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticise. So, Islamophobia, the idea promoted as it is by seemingly ignorant people, because of course we've just listened to the preachers talking completely opposite to this idea that these young ones have, in relation to inclusivity, justice, openness, love, and all this malarkey. Basically, what we've just heard is that it's about lies, deception, and that the male's allowed to do it all day and the women aren't. So you can see how this idea of Islamophobia is again rising in the same way as the other bunch did with the term anti-language or anti-Semitism, as they call it.
Tackle Islamophobia, pick and choose who we want to invite to number 10 for tea and samosas, no policy, and we will not accept your definition as you Muslims decide to define it, because that's your experience of discrimination. No, we don't accept it because we're the government, and when it comes to you Muslims, we will apply not the liberal democratic principles we apply to the rest of the country. We will apply a totalitarian approach. That's the government's response to tackling Islamophobia. Well done. What was I expecting, Mr. Deputy Speaker? A government that would miss another opportunity to actually put some policy in place to tackle Islamophobia? Dare I imagine that that's what I should expect? No, just a long list of opportunities missed by this government, missed by the Prime Minister, who stands with the British Muslim communities not.
You see, who is this girl? You know, on the one hand, we've just watched what we've watched, okay? And she's standing there and telling us we are not allowed to see all that. Because she's saying, no, that's not true. Because they're allowed to deceive. Yeah? Or she's a complete, fully programmed girl and she's doing what she believes. However, you can't live in the community and not know how it works. So this girl's disingenuous, and what's she doing in Parliament? Clearly, we've just seen and looked at exactly why we have to completely and utterly explore and expose these imams who are mistreating the entire Muslim community by feeding them garbage, mistranslation, and then forming a Sharia. And then importing the backward fruitcakes that don't know any different, so that the Western-born Muslims have no power, no say in this system that they, in their ignorance, are helping to bring in upon themselves. Now, that said, that's just for Muslims. Us white Anglo-Saxons, are we having this? Are we going to put his hands up and submit to him like that Imam suggested we do? I can't listen to any more of her because she's obviously thick. Totally thick, and I can't watch her anymore. Yep, that same one. So look at that, she wants to come on twice. No, I just can't watch that stuff because it's driving me up the wall. Now,
كثير من البنات تشتكي أنها إذا سارت في الشارع يضايقها الشباب، بل يضايقها الرجال. إذا جلست في الباص ولا في وسيلة المواصلات يضايقها من على يمينها أو من على يسارها. أقول أنت الداعية، اعلمي أنك السبب. واحدة تقول لا والله ما خرجت إلا متنقبة متحجبة متسترة متحشمة، ما فعلت شيء. أقول لعلك خرجت بغير حاجة فسلط الله عليك هذا الذئب الشيطان. انتبهي انتبهي، وأنا أقول كلاما أعرفه وأعيه وأعلم ما أقول. لعلك خرجت متنقبة متسترة فسلط الله عليك شيطانا يؤذيك، لأنك أولا عينك تجري ذات اليمين وذات الشمال، وأحيانا هي التي تنظر إليه كأنها تقول له أنا هنا ألا تراني أنت أعمى. هي التي نظرت إليه فنظر إليها فدققت النظر إليه فأرسل إليها قبل.
You buggered. You can't win. Even your eyes are not coming up. Now, when I read the Quran, and this is a long time ago, when it were getting into this covering stuff, it was clear to me that Muhammad was talking about the pubic hair, not the head of hair. But, you know, that's for Muslims to deal with. But it's honestly, it's like, what? Girls deserve it. No matter what you do as a female under Islam, it's your fault. If you get raped, it's your fault. You're removing your eyes, as he said. Well, they've covered up completely apart from their eyes. What are they supposed to do? Cover their eyes up now? Can you see the infantileness of this stupid insanity? It's the baby in the cot coming up with all sorts of sophistry so that you can never at any point make him face his own infancy. And that guy believes it because he's an infant. Honestly, it's so... Yeah, you get this now about the answer they have to how you can't protest Islam or anything else for this matter. It just gets ridiculous.
Protesting in and of itself, is it haram? The strongest view, haven't seen an evidence to say that it is. But are there things that happen at protests that could be haram, that are absolutely impossible to escape? For example, free mixing with women. At the very least. Men and women mixing with each other. Is that not something that is necessary at the protest? Yes or no? Let's not talk about other things. Let's not talk about the salah time that gets missed. Let's not talk about what? Standing next to what? A guy that's going to take it in the backside at night. Because that's who you're protesting with. That's who you're protesting with. Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about that. At the very least, is it not that men and women are coming and free mixing together? They're going to stand with... Your sisters are coming out of their houses. Allah says, وَقَلَّ فِي بُيُوتِكُمْ, stay in your house. And if you come out, sister, make sure it's in the niqab or at the very least a jilbab. At the very least a jilbab. But she's coming out with makeup, nothing. Because it's not deen of Allah for a humanitarian cause. Does that make sense?
Infancy. Baby stuff. This is just so ridiculous.
Okay, cool. So then, is Allah going to give victory to people that are disobeying Him outright? Like, if Allah is from above the heavens and the earth, but above His throne, He's looking down at these people who are protesting, asking, not even asking Allah for help, asking kuffar to intervene. And they're with what? They're free mixing. I remember I said this in a video once, and people really got angry with me. One guy wanted to physically attack me, because he was like, people are being killed, and you're saying, you're worried about free mixing. I'm like, brother, wallahi, you're a shaitan. Wallahi, you're a shaitan, man. Because victory only comes from Allah. If you leave the free mixing, the victory will come. That's the point. That's the point. Leave the sins, brother. If you leave the sin, Allah will give you victory.
This is a kid that come up against somebody who's seeing where it goes, this, and people get killing, and he's just too stupid. Too stupid to see it. Now, in the Quran, it's very clear that Allah has apportioned the adultery every Muslim will carry out by eye, by mouth, and by loin. Yet this guy's concerned about free mixing. The contradiction in it is because people haven't read it. Muslims haven't read it. And these people, these imams here, are taking Muslims off the Quran and building a Sharia on it and ensuring that you're all operating on as kafir without knowing it. And that makes you subject to death, which means these priesthoods, because they've got you in that position, can manipulate you however they want to do whatever it is they want. And keep in mind, the Quran is very clear. You have, as a true follower of the Quran, you have to accept, acknowledge, and abide by the prophets of the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk about this. Yeah, the Talmud does, but the Talmud isn't the Bible. The Mishnah isn't the Bible. And this is where the Islamic scholars are taking a lot of the Talmud stuff and mixing it up and forming the Sharia. It is in the Quran, don't get me wrong, but you can see clearly. You know, the first command, everything you need in that Quran. Where's the Sharia being built? On the Hadith, on the Talmud, on the... Straight away you've breached it if you're going to follow that. You're not in sync with it. And it's because Muslims do not read it. Now, let me have a look here. Because I have one and I can't find, what is it? and it explains how the Muslims are being set up. I hope I put it in. If not, I'll have to find it and put it under.
Well, we need the people who understand the language and the case law in the country. Because what qualifies as hate speech, as illegal hate speech, which you will have soon also in the US, I think that we have a strong reason why we have this in the criminal law.
Did you hear that? Case law, legal bar attorneys. That bar association, people really have to recognise what that is and what you're dealing with in these lower courts. They are making sure by barring any and all facts. So if you're trying to bring in your points of law, the fact that there's no contract and you're being totally honest, what's his job? What's the judge's job? To make sure that's not inclusive in the decision of the court. And so by all means, join everything that they can come up with from the cauldron in that game. And remember, these people are expert sophists. Expert sophists. You know, so you've got to go through the shit to get to the right one. And of course, we are running out of time, but this monarch did upkeep the law. We can't let this bold longhead get in. King of Jerusalem, he's their king. Oh man, it's just, you know, get a grip, people. Come on, you can't just stop playing with yourself, watching telly.
يقول إن فلسطين من بحرها إلى نهرها أرض الإسلام وإن إسبانيا الأندلس أرض إسلام وإن البقاع الإسلامية التي احتلها الأعداء يوما ستعود إسلامية بل وإننا سنصل إلى ما بعد هذه الدول التي ضاعت في زمن ما ونبشرهم بأننا على موعد أن نفتح روما كما فتحت القسطنطينية وكما ستفتح ثانية إن شاء الله. إننا على موعد أن نحكم العالم كما قال الحبيب المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم إننا على موعد مع جبهة أوسع وأعرض وأقوى وإذا كانت البدايات في فلسطين والبدايات في العراق والبدايات في أفغانستان والبدايات في الشيشان فإن الأمر إذ بدأ سيكتمل ولن يتوقف اكتمل الكيان الصهيوني سيبدأ بالتناقص حتى يتلاشى وينتهي وكذلك أمريكا اعتلت وأرعدت وأزبدت وقالت كما قال فرعون أنا ربكم الأعلى ولكنها ستنتهي وبدأوا يدركون هذه النهايات قريبا وإننا بتنا نسمع من صحف أمريكا وأوروبا أن مجدنا آفل ولا محالة وفي صبيحة هذا اليوم من خلال الجزيرة علماء أمريكان ومنظرون استراتيجيون قالوا إن أمريكا ستنتهي عما قريب ولقد قالوها من قبل عن الاتحاد السوفيتي وانتهى ونقولها الآن ستنتهي أمريكا وأوروبا المتحدة ولن يبقى إلا قوة الإسلام المتصل.
Oh, what have I done? Oh, I'm sorry about that. We've had enough of that, I think, anyway, haven't we? Oh, but can you understand why Israel doesn't like Hamas? Not that I'm accepting and agreeing with anything, but honestly, it's the same mindset. Palestine, Israeli government, same mindset. think we've had enough of that, but I'll tell you what, I think this is the one that I wanted you to watch. Muslims, you need to watch this.
From Islam is either that Allah knows they're so bad, Allah is not going to guide them. They don't deserve guidance, or we Muslims don't have the bravery that the Sahaba did in conveying the truth. So we lie and we cheat and we claim things that are not part of Islam, and guess what? Not all of them are dumb. They can tell when we lie. They can tell when someone sits behind it that says, Islam is peace. Islam is about peace. There's no jihad. The only jihad is the jihad of the soul. You fight against your struggle, your shaitan, khalas. That's where jihad ends. Every ayah you read in the book of Allah, you have misunderstood it. Ya Shaykh, haram alayk ya Shaykh. Why are you afraid to tell the people the truth? Don't you think Allah gave him a brain? Don't you think this kafir is going to open the Quran, read Surah Al-Anfal, and he's going to come across these ayat, the military ayat, which you've been trying to hide? Then what are you going to do? Then he's going to say, you guys were lying to me the whole time, and you keep telling me something, and here's your book, here's your Quran. Oh no, but no. See, you don't understand. This ayah was actually abrogated by the other ayah, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. So now they twist things around. If that was in the beginning, I mean, ajib, ya akhi. So you keep playing with the deen of Allah and changing and altering and sugarcoating to please a bunch of people, and at the end of the day, the da'wah is lost in the process.
Jesus Christ is the only way, truth, and life. The only way to the Father is through Jesus. If you don't know Jesus, you don't know God. Come to Christ today. Come to Jesus.
Okay, so that's not the one I were after. I always do this. I don't know why I've not done this. Now, let's have a look at why this is happening. Well, it were happening through the Tories, because it's Crown.
Who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us. The other candidates in this contest have published who is bankrolling their campaign. You seem to be hiding behind this process. Why won't you simply tell us tonight who are your 5 biggest donors?
We can reveal that Keir Starmer's leadership campaign was actually bankrolled by arch-Israel lobbyist Trevor Chin. Chin is the president of one of Israel's national institutions, the UJIA, which funnels money into settlements and has even been found to bring students from this country on trips to stay in illegal settlements in the West Bank. Trevor Chin is also on the executive board of BICOM, Israel's largest lobby group in this country, which is the parent organization of Luke Akehurst's We Believe in Israel. BICOM today is currently headed by Richard Pater, who is a reserve in the Israeli military and formerly was employed by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. It is from there that Luke Akehurst has launched his own Israel lobby group. Luke Akehurst was a consultant for arms firm Finmeccanica, now known as Leonardo, which has billions of pounds worth of deals with the Israeli military. Luke Akehurst was mentioned by Israeli political officer at the embassy, Shai Massoud, in the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby.
So Luke Akehurst is the director of We Believe in Israel. He's one of the best to be inside in all the parties. Seriously, there's not a lot of people like him.
This individual could very well be a minister of state very soon.
Can you see, Muslims, how you're being set up? You think Starmer's helping you out because, of course, he's giving you the free money. But really, it's part of the setup. Because who does he work for? Yeah. So I'll end it on that. Because, of course, you have to make your own minds up, everybody out there. But that's from the horse's mouth. You know, nobody's making this up. Nobody's saying this is what was said, this is what happened. There you have it. In all its glory from those that purvey it. So this idea that I've been hearing banding about on the street, which is, well, who would you rather be ruled by? Yeah? It's the same. You need to stop finding garbage excuses and shit and piss so you can carry on being a coward and sitting down watching TV, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You need to start to get a grip and start to realise that the future is in your hands and everybody else's. And you've got to start using your brain, your mind. Because if you keep running on emotion, this bunch of Johnny come lateless, you're going to have the wicked way with the lot of you. It's as simple as that, chaps. So, let's just see where we picked off. Excuse me. Right, where we go? Interesting, that'd be interesting. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Mew says he's been knighted. Yeah, there you go, Mew. It only come to me this week that actually I could do it this way. So, now you're all blue. You're all a bit blue now, so you know the crack. Any more nonsense from these shag faggots? I'll give you the nod. Just get rid. But yeah, there you go. Benefactor as well. There you go, benefactor. You see, I told you, I've tried all this before as a normal procedure, but it won't let me. And your one as well. Slipknot. So, obviously you're not speaking, so you probably don't know. Hey, there you go. It's a small club and we're in it. Alright, let's get a circular saw. Just told wife of my night order to reply, behave yourself. Yes, Mew. Let the sword rise to 12. Ed says, didn't they do that to replace Ross from Russia's central bank? Well, it's like I said, Ed, this idea that the Rothschilds are their own empire and kind of so they're just the trustees of the global empire. And so if the Rothschilds are looking like they're being defeated, it's just because they're moving in these new trustees that have all been formed in these meetings and all this that's been going on in Kazakhstan. And when you can see it like that, you don't get stuck into this battle between... They're just as trustees for the entire gig. So, I just don't buy it, you know, that this Putin's all great and fantastic. He's playing his part, and that's pretty much it. I can understand why he went into Ukraine, you know, with what's been going on in the Ukraine, by the Ukrainians, funded by Obama and Biden as vice president, and then again, when whoever this guy is pretending to be Biden became president. It is a shit show, and it is imperative that you have to recognise these other points of reality, like they're just trustees. Everything's based in their system to undermine the laws systems that were set up on trust, but even them were set up to take away your dominion right and sovereignty. Solomon gives us the camel. You elongated Ed. Yeah. She's muted. Yeah, she was. They took the sound off. Now, I've collected these over a couple of years, you know what I mean? I just think, well... And I always think, you know, but one day it'll have its time and we'll be able to air it and it'll make sense and it won't hopefully come across as us being abusive and nasty and terrible. You've got to be honest, listening to that drivel, is that shit on anybody's side? No, it's not. It's there to extort. And they want to extort from as many people as they can. It's as simple as that. And Bolshevik Labour have made sure that all these mosques have been extorting money from the communities that's coming from our credit. That's how stupid we've been while we've been watching Coronation Street and playing with ourselves. You know, it's all of us that have let it happen. It's all of us that are going to have to solve it. None of these tits in suits are going to solve it. They're preventing it, you know. I don't know. Can you hear it now? Oh, right. So, promotes nothing but malaise, malice. Yeah, absolutely. And deception. And yet they claim to be against Shaitan, the great deceiver. It just... Yeah, they haven't read it. They haven't read it, and the imams leading them all astray. Just like the priests and the vicars have led everybody astray. It's no different because it's all about the no-hide. That's where it's at. That's how they intend to pull the Gentiles into everything that they want to command from the Sanhedrin. Outwardly sold something it's not, absolutely. Great stuff, Sean. Night, Jerry. Not seeing comments. Oh, Sean in the mix. Chris White, dazzling shirt back. Hey, I'm above it. Howdy doody, Davina. Brighten up our evening, Sean. Davina, I'll have to rewatch to see when I missed 2 hours of Sean in the mix. Well, with that, I have to say, thanks for joining, mods. There's thousands of you. Thanks for modding. And have a good week. All the weather stays fine. And I'll see you next week. But I need to find this outro and say, till the next time.
electronic